TLDR, I joined my wife's group after watching her 4-year-long amazing campaign, and her Dungeon Master bashes my character every single session, despite her saying that this character is essential to her overall story and everyone's backstory. Greetings, adventurers, and welcome to the Loot Goblin Marketplace. You're not going to have everyone like you at the game table. One thing that I've found over the years is whenever you have a new player at the table, there's going to be someone who isn't a fan of the new dynamic. They might not even hate the player, they just preferred how things were before a new character was thrown into the mix. Be it less screen time, conflicting character ideals, or even something silly like you had to move up sessions an hour earlier to accommodate the new guy, and they just don't like that. There is always going to be something different that may cause friction between the players. That is when you just have to either clearly communicate what the issue is, or just move on if the change isn't really a big deal. Today's treasure is actually a little different. It comes from the r/D&D Reddit, and it goes by the name "I'm pretty sure my wife's Dungeon Master hates me." Have you ever been doing campaign prep and had an idea that you loved but you couldn't find the right map? Or has your session ever gone in a direction you haven't prepared for but want to provide a fun encounter that feels like it was planned all along? dScryb is perfect as a tool to supplement and enhance homebrew campaigns and adventure books with its huge library of read-aloud text and film-quality ambience, sound effects, and music. Imagine a scenario where your party is supposed to be investigating a monster in the forest that is terrorizing the town, but an offhand comment you made about a goblin camp has the party captivated. Now you need to come up with a goblin camp on the fly or the party is going to be disappointed, and you don't know where to begin. If you use today's sponsor dScryb, you can come up with a quick battle map, a great description, and the perfect ambient music. They'll think that you planned it from the start. Use Loot Goblin when selecting your plan and get a free 30-day trial on any of the plans. So you can take it for a spin for your next session and see if you found it helpful without any risk. Click the link in the description and check out dScryb now. For the last 4 years, my wife's been playing with a group that very quickly became close friends. Every Wednesday and Saturday night, she'd go on about epic tales and stories that she and her group would get into. Seeing her eyes light up as she talks about her tiefling artificer and his growth and development made my heart swell. She had been wanting to find a group that matches her energy and encourages creativity and told me she found it with them. I couldn't be more happy for her. With permission from the Dungeon Master and players, I sat in some of their sessions on Discord, just listening and watching, and found everyone's energy was so infectious. They bounced ideas off each other, the Dungeon Master allowed creativity and out-of-the-box thinking, even rewarded everyone for roleplay and solving issues without bashing people's skulls in. I was laughing with them, even felt my heartstrings tugged at emotional moments. I have to say the Dungeon Master was insanely great at storytelling and allowing everyone to be the character they wanted. Well, about 6 months ago, they ended their 4-year-long campaign and said goodbye to their beloved group. The Dungeon Master mentioned that she was going to start a new session set in the same world setting with the new adventure 100 years prior to the events that kicked things off. She direct messaged me asking if I would like to be a player, and I enthusiastically replied with a hell yeah. I've been playing solo TTRPGs for a while because, like my wife, I've had bad table after bad table, and this seems like the best opportunity for both of us to play together with perhaps one of the best tables we've ever had. Over the last 5 months, Dungeon Master has been contacting me and other players both in the public Discord and privately about her characters and the world. I asked her for anything and everything she had on the world setting so that I could acclimate a character that would fit perfectly within it. I was given lore, and any questions I had, she promptly answered. I asked her what kind of limitations she had or requests, and she said as long as you play a good aligned character, we Gucci. Apparently, she had some issues where people played evil and even neutral characters, and it caused the whole issue. She wants to tell stories of the hero's journey and not worry about every villager being killed for having a bad attitude or looted of precious heirlooms. When I believed that I had a good idea of what to expect, I created my character. We shared our character concepts like personalities, a bit of our backstories, classes, that sort of thing. There were so many unique traits that we all had, and it was looking like we would be diverse and amazing. The Dungeon Master wanted us to have a few secrets in our backstory that we wouldn't share with the other members of the group, making for character surprises in game. She did this in the last session and they loved it, giving them moments to discover about each other and some crazy roleplay scenes. My secret was that my character was abused and tortured by the gods of this world, a punishment for her bloodline from centuries ago. She was a tiefling runeblade warrior from an Asian-inspired home, where she prayed to her ancestors to guide her. They were very spiritual and believed that they could fight their inner curse by being better than and their progenitor. Unfortunately, most of the family had gone wiped out by the gods, leaving her and her siblings alive but scattered. Her goal is to find them and to confront the gods who had done that. The idea was fun, and we hashed out a lot of the little details that would make it interesting within the story that was being told. I was all for it and for the drama it would bring. We all had tie-ins to other characters, so I was thrilled to get playing. We had our session 0, in which the characters had already started out knowing each other from attending the same academy. We took on a group mission, and it started our main story. It was a blast, and the roleplay was very good, and that's about where the fun ended for me. From that point on, everything became about shitting on my character. We would go into other towns because that's where the story would take us, but every town apparently did not like tieflings. Every single town. We went to a place with humans, and immediately they refused to work with the group because they don't associate with cursed blood. We went to the city of elves, where the bulk of the story took place, and I had to sit out for 95% of it. The elves scoffed at her, but they were willing to work with the rest of the group. Not a single NPC would address my character, and my character wasn't allowed in any elven sacred places or inside their city, so she had to remain outside in the camp and fend for herself while the rest of the party would be welcomed. I brought up the issues I had. I told her that while I fully understand that there might be people who are untrusting of her, maybe there could be a way that someone might take some consideration to the fact that she's not a bad person. She gave it some thought and said that sounds reasonable. The next session, a player found a potion that could change one's appearance and snuck it out to give it to my character. My character had a moment of shame for being who she was, and the only way that she'd be accepted is if she changed who she was entirely. It brought her more strength to prove that she was good, to prove the world and the gods that she was worthy of being seen as a person and not some monster. There was a scene where she drank the potion and looked human, and then it went to the rest of the group. The group had a moment in which they were involved with some elven children that lasted most of the entire session. It was fun, and they got to engage with them and learn about some special alchemical potions, each of them being granted a bonus and buff for the remainder of their time there. When it finally came to my turn, my scene was of me getting into the elven city and finding one of the children who was part of the group who wanted to learn sword fighting. Since I was a rune blade, I felt that I could help them and have a fun one-on-one moment like the group had. Nope. As soon as she said that she was going to help, the dungeon master went, "Okay, you do that and have a fun sparring session," and then immediately went back to the group before ending the session. In a 6-hour session, I played for 15 minutes tops. I messaged the dungeon master again, being as polite as I could about the frustrations. My wife and her friends are having so much fun, and it seems like when the dungeon master is focusing on them, everyone is laughing and having a grand time. When we spoke, she told me that the elves are untrusting of anyone who is an elven, even more so with cursed blood. I told her that there was an orc in the party who had a violent history and elves seemed perfectly fine with them, but somehow my character, who had been atoning for their curse for several generations prior, is seen as more untrustworthy. She explained that's just the way things are, but that's what my character was fighting for. I told her it wasn't fun to not be included in the group activities, and that I was feeling left out because of this. I asked if I could change the whole cursed bloodline plot and opt for something else, or just re-roll, and she said not to worry about it, because she had a whole story built in for it, and that would all make sense when we got there. It only got worse from there. I really wanted to chime in earlier, but truth be told, I thought they were handling it in a pretty okay way. When it comes to selecting a party, this is probably one of the best scenarios you can be in. It's someone that your wife personally vouches for, you got to sit in and see how great it was and you wanted to play for yourself. And when the campaign naturally concluded and the dungeon master went out of their way to say, "We're accepting new people, would you like to join?" You hopped in, so there's no awkward tensions there. And you try to make a character that fit well in the world, you attended a session 0. Everything seemed perfect until the game actually started. And the moment that there was really any issue that you had, you brought it to the dungeon master immediately. You stated the issue clearly, you asked for solutions on their part, and then they said they were going to take your feedback at heart and appeared to make some changes, only for it to happen again. If everything was handled exactly how you wrote it down, I really don't have any advice on how to do it better. The fact that they turned around and then immediately did it again and said, "Don't worry, it's for plot reasons," that strikes a big red flag for me. There are so many RPG horror stories I see where the dungeon master in their head has a really cool idea for a character, and not wanting to ruin the surprise, they make that player suffer through months and months of bad sessions. But if someone's like, "I feel useless here, I'm not having any fun," and you know for a fact that you're treating them differently because of some plot reason, I guess all I'm trying to say here is make sure the player's having fun most of the time, because they're going to leave before you give them that really cool moment that totally makes up for 8 sessions of being useless. I really do feel like that's where the story's going, so let's just see if I'm right. Several more sessions in, the characters have been guided by the elves to a ruined city where we were supposed to find out what happened. I picked up a relic and it burned me. I had to take 11 radiant damage and had a permanent -1 to my strength score until I could get it cleared through some unknown means. My wife's character picked up the relic with the cloth and was blessed with the light, and it got a permanent +1 to her intelligence stat. It was a relic of her character's goddess, who started off a major quest line. The downside? She was one of the gods in the pantheon who deemed it necessary that my family's bloodline get wiped out. I didn't know what the hell to do. Why would my character be willing to help this goddess who killed her family and kept her and 2 siblings alive so that they could live out the rest of their days in suffering and mourning? Why pit my character against the whole group? I asked my wife if this had happened before in their games, and she said it didn't, but maybe the Dungeon Master was hoping for more drama. I told her I wasn't having fun and that I might just leave, but she wanted to play with me so badly that this was the first table we could sit at together and have fun. I'm not of the mindset to keeping to a bad table just because, but it is my wife and their previous campaign looked so much fun. I had hoped that by keeping open communication we could have a good experience. Things got mildly better with my character having some story beats. She found her older brother and saved him from an execution, and I had a little more roleplay from the other characters. But there were several moments where I felt like I was being picked on specifically. For instance, we had a scene where we were running from a giant, and the Dungeon Master asked me specifically, "Tanya, what shoes are you wearing?" "Oh, Geta, yeah, you have a disadvantage on your rolls as the wooden platforms of your Geta are getting stuck in the crevices while running," and things like that. She wouldn't ask the others what they wore, or how they did things to give them disadvantages, just me. I wondered if it was because I was the only guy in a group that is an all-girls table, but I just can't help but feel as if I'm constantly being picked on while everyone is not having to make extra challenge rolls, or have times when they aren't even part of the plot for several sessions. I've spoken with her several times and even brought up options to reroll or just politely bow out, but she told me that she had some grand plan for my character that I'll love, and it ties to the overall story and the other characters. So leaving or rerolling would ruin all that. I'm at an impasse because my wife and her friends are having a great time, and if I leave, I will somehow ruin the great plot and their progress. But I dread sitting at the table twice a week for 6 hours a day, and get only to chime in when I get any acknowledgement from the NPCs who are willing to talk to me. Sorry this was such a long post. This has been sitting with me for the past 4 months since we started. This is definitely a really interesting and frustrating scenario that you found yourself in, and it's why I wanted to cover it on the channel. Now, to me personally, this reads as an RPG horror story. This reminds me of a story about a paladin who loses their powers very early on. They get their connection cut off with their god, kind of punished like how a cleric would lose their powers instead of how a paladin should. And the Dungeon Master doesn't really seem to care when the guy kept saying, "Hey, I kind of feel weak now. I almost feel like a fighter. Can I reroll to be a fighter? At least they get, different actions." And it could be like a case where I roleplay someone who used to have a deity and they're trying to find answers. And we can still do your plot thing because you say down the road, I'm going to totally get my powers back. But it's been several sessions and I'm miserable. That story ultimately ends with the guy kind of blowing up, leaving the campaign, and being told that there was totally going to be a cool thing around the corner and they ruined it. But honestly, at that point, the guy was so mad that he really didn't care if the campaign was going to be ruined because he wasn't going to be in it anymore. Your situation's a little bit harder because if you blow up and leave, that Dungeon Master might take it out on your wife, and it's a group that she seems to be having a lot of fun with, even in this current campaign, while you're being miserable. Is it because you're the only guy and they didn't expect you to say yes and now they're kind of mad at you? It really isn't the first thing that came to mind to me. And yeah, that could ultimately be a possibility. Whenever you feel like the odd person out, you're going to try to figure out what's different, and in this case, you're the only guy. Ultimately though, I do want you to remember that it doesn't actually matter why they're doing this to you. The important thing is that you weren't having fun, you brought it up numerous times, and they seem to be taking your feedback, saying that they'll change it, and then immediately just going back to what they were doing before. So while it might not be malicious, I kind of find it hard to believe that it's incompetence, just because you've seen how they played without you, and you thought they did fantastic. And now, ever since you've joined, it still feels fantastic for everyone else, it just feels terrible for you. And they keep making it a point to say, things are going to get better, your character has a very cool arc, we're all super excited about it, so you're just going to have to suck it up and continue to be hated. If I had to predict where this story's going, maybe you're supposed to be like the first good tiefling in the bloodline that cures all the future tieflings, and then, the character that your wife plays 100 years from now doesn't have to deal with that discrimination because of what your character did and completely ended the bloodline curse. Would that be an interesting way to have the campaigns tie into each other? Yeah, probably. If they don't want to put in the effort now to make it a better experience, they don't deserve the good payoff ultimately. Does that suck for the rest of the party? Yeah, probably, but at a certain point, it's been sucking for you the entirety so far, so it's really on them. I'm curious what everyone else thinks about this story. Is this an RPG horror story in the making, or is it just some bad communication and things will shape up down the road? Make sure to comment your thoughts below because I really want to hear what you guys have to say. If you like the video, make sure to like and subscribe. You can become a member to further support the channel. As always, I hope to see you in the next one. Farewell for now.